Good afternoon, Chaitali. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to all of you on behalf of APAC News Network. We have with us today Chaitali Moitra from Turnitin, and we would like to discuss with her the genesis of Turnitin, the solutions and services that are offered, and then take it from there in terms of the how they are looking at the higher education portfolio and both the industry roadmap ahead and where does Turnitin's future vision fit in that roadmap. So, Chaitali, if I may ask you to start with, if you can give us a brief genesis of Turnitin, that would be, I think, a good starting point.
Sure. I would, first of all, I would like to say thank you for having me here. I mean, it's indeed a real pleasure that I am, able to come and meet you and talk to you about Turnitin. So, as Turnitin is a global company and it is dedicated to ensuring the integrity of education and meaningfully improve learning outcomes. Now, we have been here for more than 20 years. Turnitin has partnered with educational institutions to promote honesty, consistency, and fairness across all subject areas and assessment types. Our products are used by educators, to guide their students towards higher standards of integrity and by students, researchers, and professionals to do their best original work. So we have at present, over like 15,000 academic institutions, publishers, and corporations who are using our services across more than 140 countries. Our product portfolio includes Feedback Studio, Grade Scope, Authenticate, Turnitin Originality, Turnitin Similarity, and ExamSoft. So, since 1998, in fact, Turnitin has worked closely with the education community worldwide in endorsing and supporting academic integrity. And in India, we are working with more than 500 institutions, including corporates and also some K-12, in educating and supporting the students with academic integrity. We also actively, collaborate with academicians across the globe in informing and supporting thoughtful original work from the students and other original paper writers. So that is the essential work of Turnitin. And if you ask me why is integrity important, it's extremely important, and more so after the new normal has set in. It is important to step back and analyze the system in whole to ensure the take on the correct journey, and to arrive at a desired result of a meaningful, relevant, and applicable education that is to be imparted. So I think with our solutions that we provide, we strive to do that, be it in academic integrity and be it providing assessment solutions.
Thanks. So I will. This is a very critical and interesting aspect. This academic integrity, and there are two very critical use cases of this, if I may use the word use cases, in the current ecosystem, and I want to take each separately. So basically, I'm talking about one you mentioned about the impact on the assessment system, especially in the new normal. And the other one is another major challenge. This is for the thesis and those research articles for the basically the PhD theses. And we have numerous instances heard in India about things like plagiarism and on those. There is a need to authenticate that those theses and researches are really original and not, if I may say, either plagiarized or basically aggregated from multiple sources. So let's first take the assessment part of it. We know what we have seen in the last 2 years. Uh, the whole assessment system has also gone virtual, and even going ahead, it would remain mm, as expected in a hybrid kind of mode. So, in this
Sure.
new normal, what are the challenges in assessment and where the question of academic integrity comes in, and how does Turnitin help?
See, in assessment, we have a solution called Grade Scope. Okay, so it is rubric based AI assisted assessment solution. What does it do? See, I think one of the I discussed this with you earlier also. We always talk about teachers, first of all, not being fair. Sometimes students feel, maybe they have not been accurately marked. And I don't blame the teachers also, because when you're doing a voluminous task of correcting paper through pen and paper mode, it is very time consuming, and especially now in the remote working system, where most of the students have not been in school, and even if they're in school, it's very limited. It is much more imperative that the entire assessment system is done online. So how the system works is, you can upload, even if it's pen and paper, you can upload it. The teacher can set rubrics and decide, okay, fine, this is the way the marking will be. Teacher can actually go ahead and write comments. So there's a group that is formed basis the way the AI enables it, that through this grouping, it makes assessments giving out assessments easier for the teacher. And therefore there is a fairness, there's an integrity even in the assessment that is being conducted, giving time to teachers to also write feedback. It is, it's very crucial. Assessment should be used as a feedback mechanism. It is not to say you're right or wrong, that your marks are low, but it is, to deliver better learning outcomes. And that can only come when the students get and gain visibility as to what is it that they need to improve upon, what is it that they need to focus on. So Gradescope enables them to do that. And when I'm talking about and going back to your integrity solutions, when you're talking about papers that are being written by researchers and everything, see, there's some key factors that to be need to be focused upon, like precision. Ambiguities in writing cause confusion and may prevent a reader from grasping the crucial aspects of the methodology and the synthesis. Clarity is important in the scientific writing and the research papers that come out. Concepts and methods in the sciences can often be complex. So writing that is difficult to follow greatly amplifies any confusion on the part of the reader. Along with it, there is objectivity. Any claims that you make need to be based on facts, not intuition or emotion. So that is wherein, even in research writing, you find integrity plays a key role in driving the same. And so there are two different solutions for two different aspects. One is for the educators for their grading, which is the assessment solution, and what one is integrity building, academic integrity in education for students to develop their creative thinking and writing skills.
Thank you. The academic integrity part I would like to take up separately. Regarding the grid score thing you mentioned for assessment, I have another question. You
Yes, sure.
rightly mentioned the ultimately the aim of the assessment is to sort of give the feedback to the students as to his understanding or his or her concepts. But end of the day, assessment is a fairly subjective kind of thing. Unless it's not a very mathematics or those kind of quantifiable subject being assessed, say an English paper, uh, mm, uh, it's subjective from teacher to teacher or the person who is assessing it. Uh, that is one part of it. It depends on person, the subjectivity. It can even depend upon, as you rightly mentioned, the time when the person is assessing, if he or she is under some stress or something. So it's a very subjective thing. So now my question is, how can a solution like grade score one sort of take care of the subjectivity? And also the other thing is, even if we see even within academic institutions between different kind of boards, what we have seen, the assessment process or the gradation methods are not very homogeneous really. But some solution like grid score should try to achieve some sort of homogeneity. So how does it manage that?
See, if you look at it, any paper, can be based on rubrics. Because say, suppose a history question, right? I mean, it's talking about the reign of Alauddin Khilji. Okay. Now, there are certain pointers, certain dates, which the student cannot go wrong on, right? So, assessment, what happens when you are kind of putting it in a system, when you know that, okay, these are the things which need to be mentioned. The AI enables you to measure that, to in measure that what percentage of it is actually covering. Second thing, why I would always talk about an integrity solution, especially for arts and sciences paper, an arts paper, because science and maths, as you rightly said, yes, evaporation has one definition, it's much more easier to gauge, right? And mathematics also, a particular calculus will have a certain formula, and you need to follow that. That is how you will arrive at the answer. But when it talks about literature, when you talk about history, when you're talking about the arts, it's more so important to use an integrity tool along with it. That's why we are always telling our educators, that why don't you use a similarity checking software, or use an TFS, which is a Turnitin feedback studio, which all IB schools use, along with Gradescope, so that that student, while writing also, is able to create something which is unique, something which has a lot of their thoughts also into it. It should not be just learning from the book. The rote learning concept is not there. Earlier, when I did my masters, in English from Jadavpur University, I still remember people used to actually talk about how they would copy paste answers, like, okay, fine, this particular character of Hamlet has been defined, has been talked about like this by so and so in so and so book. Now we are saying, of course, you need to consult those books. It's absolutely right. But give the right citation, put your own thoughts in, create your own conclusions, even in literature. So, this is how, the tools, they tend to work together in sync to create a better literature paper. And the biggest thing about the assessment solution is, for the teachers, it makes work much easier, because when you're having it in online platform and you have your AI assisted rubric setting grading happening, your 80% of the work is totally taken care of. The 20% needs to happen from you, where you need to write the feedback to the student. Teachers cannot avoid reading the answer. We're never saying that, because then the role of teacher will not be there. See, teacher has to read the answer. The teacher has to provide the feedback. Yes, it makes it easier, because if you're already having a platform whereby okay, fine, this is where things are on the right track and things may not be on the right track, then the teacher gets the opportunity, the time to write the feedback. What was happening earlier? Paper and pen, going through sheets of paper and correcting and reading every word, it makes it a lot more difficult. It used to be very time consuming. So if you eradicate the time, obviously the teacher intervention then starts playing a much more crucial role. And that is what is required. The assessments are supposed to enhance learning outcomes. They're supposed to equip educators, with the tool to understand which student in a class, is actually grasping the subject, and which student may be needing some extra help or assistance.
Okay. So, one, what you mentioned again is very correct, and but one, I can say, consequence of that is where you have mentioned that the assessment pattern, you develop certain patterns, which basically the AI that you are saying is sort of those, if I may say, behavioral pattern for assessment, which other teachers follow. So now the another challenge is, now even there are multiple teachers who are the educators. They are themselves are coming from different backgrounds, very heterogeneous kind of backgrounds. So the amount of training they require on the software, basically to help making a better assessment. So how does Turnitin get involved in
So
providing
we
this
always
training?
we always provide them training. We always guide them. We provide them training. We actually take them, because it Gradescope supports different types of assessments. It can be from multiple choice, to using bubble sheets, every kind of assessment it supports. Our aim is actually to make sure that the teacher is always there. So we do have a very strong customer support that happens. We do provide, trainings, and we also provide any intervention. Like sometimes, even after training, we realize that they come back to us and maybe, they need some more clarification. We are always there to provide them that. Because see, one thing is for sure, you're absolutely correct, that not everybody may be tech savvy to where everything happens. But I think what pandemic has done, and it's a good thing that has happened, is people who were not even tech savvy earlier are now tech savvy. Earlier, if you notice, so many teachers, they did not know how to use Zoom. I mean, the question of using Zoom, using Google Classroom, using Microsoft Team, those things didn't arise because they didn't have to do it. Now they're understanding how to make lesson plans, they're understanding the need and requirement for softwares. So I think, in a way, on their own, people have realized the need to educate themselves, and we are always there to assist them. We are always there to assist them. I mean, I think, it's more important, if you're addressing the educating community, you have to also ensure that they are so educated that they can pass on the learning to their students. And in fact, we did once a workshop with the students, for integrity solution, to tell them how to use the software, because we felt that maybe, somewhere the students also need to learn, okay, right, how to use the software, how to make sure that, they are also not making the same mistakes over and over again. I think, training is the only way to educate, and we are more than happy. We have a very strong team which is based in India, which does the training. We have also interventions if required, that we provide from US or from Australia or from UK. So
Okay. So now we come to the, you touched upon the other part of the academic integrity, where these research scholars are producing these thesis papers. So there also, apart from the concept part, which is critical and where we see a lot of compromises happening nowadays, there is another tendency. It need not always be blatant plagiarism, if I may use that word. Need
true.
not always be blatant plagiarism, but often it is an aggregation. It's an aggregation of certain facts. It's not really something original, concept coming out in a thesis. So, how can an academic integrity solution take care of this anomaly?
So, I think it's very important to understand plagiarism spectrum 2.0, which identifies 12 types of unoriginal work. Okay. And I think familiarity with traditional forms of plagiarism and emerging trends will help students develop original thinking skills and do their best original work. And, the 12 that they talk about is, one is like student collusion. It is when, when you work with other students on an assignment meant for individual assignment. Then you have word for word plagiarism, which is, of course, what you mentioned, copying and pasting content without proper attribution. Self plagiarism, that reusing one's previously published or submitted work without proper attribution. Mosaic plagiarism, that is weaving phrases and texts, from several sources into one's own work. Adjusting the sentences without quotation marks or attribution. Then you have software based text modification, like taking the content written by another and running it through a software tool, like a text spinner, translation engine, to evade plagiarism detection. Then you have contract cheating, when you engage a third party for free or for pay or in kind to complete an assignment and represent that as one's own work. Then there is inadvertent plagiarism, which is forgetting to properly quote or citation a source, or unintentional paraphrasing. Paraphrase plagiarism, where rephrasing a source's ideas without proper attribution. Computer code plagiarism, where you copy and adapt source code without permission from and attribute it to, and don't attribute it to the original creator. You have source based plagiarism, that is providing inaccurate or incomplete information about sources, such as that they cannot be found. Then you have a manual text modification, that is, you manipulate text with the intention of misleading, plagiarism. and data plagiarism, where you falsify or fabricate data, or improperly, you appropriate someone else's work, putting researchers, institutions, or publishers' reputation in total jeopardy. So, these are the 12 types of plagiarism, and they can easily be avoided, by our tool, because it might show 30%, but it will actually show up the similarity report, which actually will show up in terms of from where the plagiarism has happened, or what maybe need to be worked at. So that is what it is all about. I mean, the plagiarism is not just copying and pasting. It's huge. Sometimes they do, like there's a word, they will insert another letter and they will put it in white, and that way, our software will detect it. But with a plain eye, when you're looking at it, you won't be able to detect it. And that is
Okay,
also.
so that's the interesting part. Since you mentioned these 12 types of plagiarism, and if I may say, the corrective action required is also different in 12 cases. The magnitude also might be different. Like one was the inadvertent plagiarism, which you mentioned.
Yes.
There, the corrective action required is can be much less severe, if I may say, than
Yes.
something blatant copy and paste. So now my question is, as a software, how does your solution one distinguish between these 12 types of plagiarism, and more importantly, how does it take that corrective action accordingly?
So what happens, when they submit the paper right on the software, and we actually come to know, like, because see, everywhere there is a repository of database, right, which each software has access to. And one of the main thing that we do, like, scopus, there we are having an access, right? So when you are having the scientific journal access, so any scientific paper that comes up, it will actually throw up that from where it came. Anything on the internet, anything which is on our repository, because we do have the repository of databases where people have submitted to us, those, all these will, even come out, be it, you have taken it maybe from your own work, and if you have submitted that work, then it is bound to be there in the database. So it will always throw up that, okay, fine, this is how the person has plagiarized. So by identifying the sources, and if you realize that citations have not been given, definitely you will definitely do citations. Okay, right? It is, there is, one of the things which one must realize is there's nothing wrong in actually using uh, citation. Nobody is saying that it is, something which is, wrong, and it shouldn't happen. But I think, one of the problem, that we have with some publishers is, just you cannot just set a number at which a manuscript will be rejected, because a high degree of similarity may just indicate a well researched article with lots of references, or it may indicate that the articles has previously been posted to a preprint repository, both which are absolutely fine, and both of which they will be able to easily identify if they use our software authenticate. So, if you use our software, you are protected against repeating that mistake. And the whoever is a reviewer, right, they will realize that, okay, fine, if this citation has happened and the author has not, they can always then ask the author, to make those necessary corrections, or to provide the citations, and relook at the paper once more. And that's how, before every publishing work, I mean, these are the different stages that happens. Like, if you there's something called a cope framework, where they actually have a framework in terms of how the publishing paper would go through the transition process if they're found to have made some errors in not giving citation, not acknowledging the work. Because sometimes what they do, in especially in researchers, so they have a guide, right? Sometimes they put a senior person's name because a person has written before, because they want to give authenticity to the document that they have given, right? So a lot of times they do that, lot of times do that as a favor also, where maybe somebody tells them, okay, fine, why don't you include this person's name in your paper, and that person wouldn't have worked on it at all, but that person is supposed to get the credit of it. So all these things, what helps is that this a protect tool enables you to protect yourself against these flaws that you can, in I mean, sometimes unknowingly we do things which impacts our work. Sometimes knowingly we do it, right? Unknowing mistakes, if it throws up, that author can always take steps to make ramifications, right? But when it comes to your I mean, doing it purposely,
Knowing
that's
mis-
something that you can't. I mean, that is something that you either have integrity or you don't have integrity, and how desperate you are.
Exactly. So, the second part of this academic integrity solution, that is, we are talking about the research scholars and thesis. This will have use cases, I'm sure, one for the media industry as well as for the publishing industry also.
Absolutely. I think a lot of media industry, they have now started using it. I wouldn't say it's very rampant. I mean, I don't find that many users from the media industry doing it, though we would encourage it. But I think a lot are, in terms of, if there is an article that comes out and gets published, they do some checking definitely that they be using. But regarding researchers, it is an absolute must, because I think one of the things that we always tell researchers, that manage your time during researching and writing process. We tell them that employ effective research strategies. Choose when to you want to summarize, when you want to paraphrase, when you want to quote information. Provide your proper citation for your paraphrase, quoted, summarized information also. And if you feel that it is really needs to be attributed to the original author, you should. We always encourage researchers to use the authenticate similarity report to refine their work. And I think the most important thing, be it any industry, is that you have to own your academic integrity, and you need to ask questions in the event you feel that you are not very, if there's sometimes a blurred line that exist between what you think is plagiarism and what isn't, then they should always ask. Be researchers, be, I know in journalism, and I think we had discussed this once, in journalism I've seen people, of course, putting references of a lot of papers, and they can't definitely say that so and so paper mentioned this also, because these are facts that are happening. But I think for a journalist, more so, creative thinking and creative writing is very important, because for every opportunity is a unique opportunity for them to express themselves. And a journalist can actually put across a thought, more than what it is meant to be, less than what it is meant to be, or even the interpretation can be left up to the reader or up to the journalist as to how he wants the interpretation to be. So I think, I mean, my father was a journalist, and one of the things I learned from him is that I think the art of writing skills is the most important part of a journalist job. So yes, in media industry, I think the scope is a lot less, because if it is a copied report, your readers will stop reading you. And readers are very much aware, especially now with the social media, with the posts that you see, and you have Twitter handles taking out the same post. So if you are having your New York Times write what Times of India is writing, and what again, you are having Economist write, you can tell where the plagiarism has happened or where it is.
Exactly. Now, coming to the business aspect, in terms of both the areas we have heard. So, what is the sort of business model Turnitin follows for India? It can be with the academic institutions, it can be the education boards, the universities, or in some cases you mentioned even the K-12 schools. On the other hand, for the research thing, how are the who are the
So
entities you are working with?
So we only do institutional licenses. We are like more into like enterprise licenses. We prefer that. We always sign up with institutions. We don't encourage individuals to sign up, because first of all, it's very difficult. I mean, if we're going to have individual sign-ups, it's a very difficult proposition to maintain that, and one has to get into a B2C environment, which we are not. We are absolutely a B2B in the B2B workspace. So our model is very simple. We normally have educational institutions, of course, universities and colleges, which use. We are finding a growing need amongst colleges. Earlier, it was not so much for the undergraduate students, but we are finding some institutions actually wanting that the UG students should use plagiarism software. And we do also have corporate houses, especially consultancy firms, which like to use our software because they do churn out a lot of projects and they need to ensure that there's no plagiarism in their work. We do have IB schools which are using our Turnitin Feedback Studio because that is a mandate that they have. We do have some K-12 schools now showing interest in having it incorporated in the 11th and 12th grade because they've realized that it's important that this habit starts from a young age. So it is basically, we sometimes have NGOs who sign up with us because there's some paper that they're creating and they want to make sure that it's original. So it is not just the research community. I won't be able to say that it's only the research community. Yes, certain softwares are meant for certain segment. So like if you have authenticate, I would say yes, it's essentially for the researchers, right? Because of the way the kind of database repository that it addresses. While for normally for students with this Turnitin Feedback Studio, because they want the opportunity for the teachers to provide feedback. We have the similarity also, which is at a little smaller scale, which is also used by many institutions. So it depends upon the need as to what they want to use it for.
Can you name some of these marquee institutions where the solutions have been adopted?
Normally we do not, to be very honest with you, till it is we normally in interviews or in press journals we don't write, because I think that's one of the policies. Being an American company, you would understand that you cannot take your customer's name without their consent. So if I would have known that I would need to use, I would have asked. But yes, there are many leading institutions which are using our tools. We have
And
more than
okay.
500 plus institutions in India which are using it at present.
And what is the adoption time and process? Because as you earlier mentioned, there needs to be a certain amount of training with a certain kind of rigor that needs to be imparted to the teachers, and only then the adoption. So how long that takes?
It doesn't take very long, See, what normally happens is when somebody signs up, right, and we have an onboarding session where we provide demo. Most important person for any software is the admin, because the admin person needs to know it. And what we have realized is that 5% plus institutions and corporates, I would say, they have a very good IT trained admins, who are looking into this aspect. And then they do training of certain, professors who they know, or teachers who they know would be involved. We provide them training. What happens, they start using the software. It's very easy to use. Then when they come up and they say that, why don't you provide us another intervention training, we do so. We also periodically in a month, we have open webinar sessions whereby we give them detailed demo again of the product, talk about the product features, and whoever wishes, to join. So normally we send the invites to the universities. They ask their students, they ask their other professors, who are new users to learn. So that is how we, kind of keep on reinforcing. We do still have glitches that come up with people. Maybe we tell them don't save it in the repository, then you would have to delete it. So now we have improved our product, and hopefully by in another 1 month's time, even in India, it's already being used in UK. Now it will come to India also in months time, where they can do their own deletion if by mistake they put it in the repository. Because what happens is, if you put your draft in the repository, then you take up another article, then your article will have the similarity check with your paper only. That will, so it will be difficult for them to submit it then. So this is something that we are reinforcing. I think it's a and we have a tech team which is based here, and they are available almost 24 by 7. So they are, contacted, they're emailed, and they immediately respond, and they try to provide solutions.
So, obviously, as you said, the IT trained admin who are at the forefront of uh, I may say, the deployment roadmap in their institutions. So, how has perceptibly this process changed post pandemic to what was happening 2 years before?
See, I would say one thing that earlier, I joined Turnitin, of course, last year, and let me be very clear with you. I joined Turnitin end of 2020, right? And what I have seen, because I joined at time of peak pandemic, I found that lot more institutions were coming and asking for this because it was more so required, because in the online mode they are not too sure what's happening. But even before that, if you look at UGC, coming out with the rule that there needs to be a plagiarism checking tool that is there. That means the government, education board over here in India itself, has taken the step to ensure academic integrity is maintained. I think in the last probably 4 5 years, there's been a shift in the mindset of people, right? As people have been using, if you look at a lot of edtech startups happened during that time, people have gotten used to using things in the online mode. So I think, this gearing up has been happening for quite some time. Pandemic probably accelerated it. So what probably would have taken a longer time became faster, because people realize that they have to be tech savvy. They need to make sure that work cannot stop. I mean, 3 months lockdown was fine, but beyond that, people realize that they cannot stop working. They have to work, right? I mean, researchers, you won't believe this. I think they were the most working on their research materials during the time of pandemic, because probably they got the time to be away from their classes and be at home and use it. So the surge in the need for these kind of software, I think, increased a lot more.
Okay, and so my last question would be, if we look ahead for the next few quarters, if I may say. So, what are going to be your key focus areas?
I think one of the key focus area I have is educating even colleges in suburban towns and municipalities to you know build in academic integrity in the system, to go to schools and tell them to start it at a younger age. Because if you look at the reports, a lot of time, I mean, prime minister of a country has been asked to go because there was plagiarized work. The ministers have been involved in plagiarism. So there's been a lot of news lately about plagiarism and how it has affected. So I would recommend that we start this early from 11th and 12th. So my main focus would be educating people as much as possible through seminars, workshops, and opportunities like this, to present our thoughts and talk about academic integrity, which is crucial to success. I think to be a successful citizen of the country, one needs to have academic integrity. That's very important.
And thanks
Okay.
for your time.
Thank you so much. Bye bye. Take care. Have a good day.